we're covering every aspect of the U.S. engagement in Iran this week, but there's really one element of it that I wanted to drill down and talk to you about. One of the arguments in the administration has been that we're going to run out of air defense interceptors. We don't have enough munitions for this. And we're really getting bogged down and distracted from our larger threats in Asia Pacific. So I'm wondering if you could walk me through, do you buy that argument and maybe explain how Iran is actually quite ensnared in our larger competition, for instance, with the Chinese Communist Party?
Let me start, maybe if I can, with the biggest picture and then zoom into your very specific and welcome question. The biggest picture being what you just said, and that is Iran's cooperation with other members of what we've been calling here at FDD the axis of aggressors. It's my view that the United States confronts the most dangerous geostrategic moment we've seen since 1945. That's not my idea. That first came from the National Defense Strategy Commission a year and a half or so ago. One of the things that makes this geostrategic environment so dangerous is that our adversaries are cooperating in unprecedented ways. Again, don't take my word for it. Look at the testimony of General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, last summer. He said that we're seeing unprecedented cooperation between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, basically across all major domains of power. So I've been overseeing and leading here at FDD a 20-month or so research project looking in just that. From January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2025, we documented 616 instances of security cooperation among those four adversaries across 5 categories of cooperation: weapons development, weapons proliferation, intel sharing, military exercises, and military exchanges. Pretty much everywhere we look, the slicky boy move of the Chinese Communist Party is they're helping the other 3, namely North Korea, Russia, and Iran, with dual use support. And the reason they're doing that is they want to help their Axis partners, our adversaries, our enemies. They want to hurt America and our partners. And they want to tangibly help their defense industrial bases and their means of their aggression, but they want to avoid the consequences.
Can I ask you real quick about one specific example that we saw in the press recently, which was a potential deal to sell rather sophisticated anti-ship missiles to Iran from Beijing? I mean, this would pose a direct threat to U.S. Aircraft carriers and destroyers off Iran, similar to kind of the larger threat where everyone's discussing in the Pacific to keep U.S. assets out of the Pacific. So is that one example of this growing coordination where if we hit Iran a year, 2 years from now, where we might face a much tougher adversary, and this really is an opening to pull apart that axis a little bit?
Yes. Yes, in that I saw the news. We're still digging into that details to confirm, but let's be clear. China's support for the Islamic Republic of Iran so far, other than buying Iranian oil, right, which provides the Islamic Republic of Iran the revenue by which they build their ballistic missiles, work on their nuclear program, support terrorism, and oppress/murder the Iranian people. A lot of that is Chinese money paying for Iranian oil. The primary means that they've been supporting them is through this dual use. So if China crosses that threshold that you just described and goes from dual use to finished weapon systems, that would be a major step, a major significant step. They've hesitated to do that because they're afraid of American sanctions and they're afraid of European sanctions. And so that's why up to this point we haven't seen that. But here's the dynamic to understand. Everyone focuses how most of the Axis cooperation is happening in the bilateral domains, not multilateral. And they said, therefore, it's not an Axis. We can talk about that, but that misses the point because Russia has been helping not only Iran's nuclear program for years, but they're also been helping recently Iran's space launch capabilities. And so Russia's support for Iran's space launch capabilities should matter to Americans because when Iran is able to put satellites in space, they're able to look at our bases more closely. They're able to conduct more precise attacks, which means more threats to our troops and our allies and partners.
Right. And I think you're painting a good picture here about how this web is all connected and we can't simply seal off regions of the world and deal with them on their own.
Yes.
But I do think, the Americans hear the argument, okay, well, we are running short on these air defense interceptors. We've used them, a lot of them in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And you and I think, have both looked into that issue deeply and have been saying that the U.S. needs to expand its production of these weapons to be prepared for whatever might come. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about THAAD interceptors and Patriot interceptors, which are definitely being called upon this week to take down Iranian incoming fire.
Yeah.
What has, first of all, should our shortages of those weapons constrain us from striking Iran? And then second, what's out there that we can do to increase production of these weapons in a relevant time frame that isn't years and years away?
Absolutely. You're asking me about one of my favorite topics. I'll try to be concise. There's a nuanced picture here, and I'll try to answer your question. Let's start with THAAD. This is the concerning part. All this is truthful. This is the concerning part. And then I'll give you some of the reasons why I think the truth of what I'm about to say is being misused, misunderstood, or mischaracterized by some. So THAAD, what is that for your viewers? It's an acronym. It stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. America conducts air defense using a layered system. Just the Israelis use a layered system. At the top tier of that system is THAAD. It works with Patriot, and then it works with other systems as part of that tiered U.S. air and missile defense structure. So during just some quick history in terms of Iranian ballistic missiles. So we saw the first direct war since 1979 between Israel and Iran in April of 2024. During that conflict, Iran launched approximately 120 ballistic missiles toward Israel. In October, they launched 200 ballistic missiles. In the 12-day war, they launched more than 500. Are you seeing the trend? 120, 200, 500. And now we are in this war, and we've passed that 500 ballistic missile mark in about 2 to 3 days. Not 12 days, 2 to 3 days. So Iran is sprinting to increase their ballistic missile production capacity, reconstituted after the 12-day war, so that they can try to overwhelm American and Israeli air defenses. So let's be clear on that. But now let's talk specifically about THAAD. So they launched over 500 ballistic missiles during the 12-day war. According to open source, unclassified reporting that me and my colleague Ryan Brobes published in an op-ed last year when we called for urgently procuring more THAAD interceptors, unfortunately proving prescient, if I do say so myself. We launched about 150 THAAD interceptors during the 12-day war, 150. I'm telling you right now, not in the worst war of the 21st century against China in the first island chain. I'm talking about in a 12-day conflict with the Islamic Republic of Iran, the United States of America expended roughly a quarter of our THAAD interceptors. Now, if you're a patriotic American that thinks we're awesome like I am, you might say, how the heck did we get to that point? Did you know, do you and your viewers know that in the fiscal year 2026 Trump administration budget request that they asked for only 25 THAAD interceptors? 25. I just told you that we used over 150 in the 12-day war. And then you add reconciliation to that, it was 12. So a total of 37. Here's what makes that number extra frustrating, because I did our homework as you'd expect me to. And you know what industry was capable of producing this year, fiscal year 26? They are capable of producing 96. So we got problems in the United States. One of the problems is insufficient defense production capacity. One of the reasons for that, and one of the main continuing problems, is that the Pentagon consistently across administrations of both parties has failed to buy more. If you don't buy enough, the production capacity withers, your arsenals wither, and it's not there for you in a crisis. The good news, here's the good news, going to the good news, I'm trying to be an optimist, is that since then, the Pentagon, as part of the Arsenal of Freedom effort, they've put out contracts worth billions of dollars to buy more of these interceptors. And the people that pay the most for this lack of foresight are our service members who are standing between us and those who want to hurt us. So those who would want to take these facts that I just laid out and say, well, you know, we shouldn't be going after Iran. Well, here's a problem. This is not some tangential concern. We're talking about the world's worst state sponsor of terrorism, refusing to relinquish its interest in nuclear weapons, working at least indirectly toward the eventual deployment of an ICBM, continuing to support terrorist groups, continuing to try to exterminate the world's only majority Jewish state, and has the blood of hundreds and hundreds of Americans on their hands. This is not someone else's concern. This is America's concern. And if you want to weaken our adversaries and make more Americans safe, you cannot ignore when the world's worst state sponsor of terrorism is refusing to relinquish its interest in nuclear weapons. Yes, we're going to continue to expend air defense interceptors. Yes, we don't have enough. But no, I am not concerned of running out of them in this war with Iran. But I am concerned about how depleted it will be when we're done, and the degree to which we would be prepared for a worst case scenario in the Baltics with Russia or in the first island, say in China. That is why we as a country should be spending more on defense and sprinting to procure the maximum quantity the industry can produce right now, demanding that they tell us plans for double, tripling, quadrupling their production capacity and fielding those forces as quickly as possible.
To your point, we're leaving capacity on the table, but also, I mean, my reporting around Capitol Hill is that, you know, the Pentagon came to Congress with a late request for extra money for munitions, and some of it remains unfunded. So there's still more, we could still be making more of a sprint than we already are. I don't think there's enough appreciation for things like multi-year contracts, working more with allies and co-production, buying long lead time parts and bulks. I mean, there's a lot the United States could do to improve that picture. And my last thought is too, just, you know, if our adversaries think that the United States isn't willing to use these missiles, then the number in the cupboard it doesn't matter. And so this willingness to accept risk for an important outcome in Iran seems to be also just an essential feature of deterrence.
So multi-year procurement, that was a focus of our Arsenal Democracy report. And so what we've had is an authorization by the Armed Services Committees to use multi-year procurement for munitions. But what we've also sometimes had are the appropriators who failed to appropriate the associated money. And
right.
Sometimes, as you know well, sometimes the reason is because the Pentagon can't show X percentage of savings. But just like, you use Amazon Prime speed delivery to get something quickly because you need important, sometimes speed is more important than 2% cost savings. And so that's my friendly message to the appropriators. A quick comment on the precision strike missile. I talked about it's not just how many missiles they have and how many defense interceptors they have. It's how much we're taking out their missiles, their launchers, and the archers. And I just want to highlight something kind of exciting and interesting. Me and a colleague in 2023 called for the deployment of the precision strike missile. This is a ground launch system that is a replacement for the ATACMS that has deeper range. And so we called for the deployment of that into the Middle East so that we could hit more things in Iran. Well, according to analysis by others that we've confirmed, we've now seen the precision strike missile used in these attacks against Iran. And that's really a good thing. One of the main reasons why I believe it's a wise investment, not charity, to support Ukraine is because I think Ukraine's fighting all members of the Axis, and their enemy is our enemy, and their interests are our interests, broadly speaking, but also because what happens in Ukraine matters in the Pacific. That's because deterrence, going to the point that we're making about Iran, is not hermetically sealed to one region or another. Why? That's because deterrence is based on perception, not your perception of mine, the perception of our adversaries. Perceptions of what? Perceptions of our military capabilities and our political will to use it. And if we have big muscles but aren't willing to throw a punch, then our muscles don't matter as much. And so if we're not willing to take the fight to Iran for the reasons we've described, then what do we think the Chinese Communist Party is going to conclude about our willingness to deploy thousands of Americans to fight in the Pacific, to defend our interests and to defend Taiwan, thereby making the aggression more likely? So what we do and don't do in Ukraine, what we do and don't do with Iran, affects decision-making in Beijing that can have war and peace, life and death consequences.